What's up, nerds? My name is Corey Bergeron. You're watching Corey Bergeron Recordings, and we are back with a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my writing template. If you are not familiar with the concept of a writing template, it is a session that you create in advance that eliminates a lot of repetitive tasks. You set up all of your routing, you have all of your go-to plugins ready and set up, so it allows you to create with minimal friction. In my case, I have a rock-based template, so it has a MIDI virtual drum instrument. It's got, bass tone lined up. It's got a bunch of different guitar tones and effects all lined up, and then it's all sent to a mix bus and has a bunch of processing on it. So all I have to do is click in a drum beat and play a little bit of guitar and bass, and it automatically sounds like a relatively finished product. Having this template is amazing when it comes to writing. It keeps you totally in the flow of writing instead of having to split your brain between like navigating IDA and all the technical side. So in this video, I'm going to break down my writing template. I'm a Pro Tools user, as well as I have a bunch of paid for software that you might not have. So even if you just have a basic version of Logic, you can create your own writing template that's similar to this. Go through, make it your own, make it something that works for you. I'm going to talk about the mindset behind everything. So hopefully this all makes sense. So before we jump into it, if you plan on releasing music anytime soon, I recommend using the service DistroKid. DistroKid is a service that allows you to get your music on all the major streaming services. This includes Spotify, Apple Music, and 150 plus other places. For just a low annual fee, you can upload as much music as you want, and you get to keep 100% of your royalties. It's a good thing. So if you are signing up for DistroKid and you want to support this channel, consider using my link, www.distrokid.com/whatsupnerds, and you will save 7% when you sign up. It also supports the channel. There will be a link for that in the description. Check it out. DistroKid. It's cool. Let's talk about writing templates. Okay, so in front of me, I have a Pro Tools session, and this is kind of my current writing template when I'm working on rock-based music. One thing to keep in mind when you're creating your own writing template is it's going to evolve. So don't get overwhelmed with the idea of you have to create a perfect template from the start. Just create something, and then as you go, start manipulating it into a way that works best for you. So I'm going to break this down, and we're going to talk about it. So at the top here, we have a sub kick, a crowd shot, a crash, and an explosion. So these are basically just like production effects that I like to just have at the ready to throw into a session. All together they sound like this. Pretty cool. You can throw those all leading up into a chorus and on the chorus, and it makes it hit. So underneath the production effects, we have the MIDI drums here, and I'm actually using Steven Slate Drums 4. I know it's out of date, but this is what I have, and this is what works. And I'm using it in kind of a unique way where I'm routing all of the shells out of the plugin to these aux tracks down here. So we have 3 different kicks, 2 snares, tom 1, tom 2, and on these aux tracks, I actually have the trigger plugin with some post-processing on it. And what that is effectively doing is just using some of my go-to drum samples. So workflow-wise, this works really well. I can just write drums here in MIDI, and it automatically routes through these tracks. I have a bunch of processing on them. It's routed to, snare verb, tom verb, drum verb, as well as a parallel compression bus, and then those all route to the drums down here. So what this effectively does is I'm able to create a drum beat, click it in, MIDI, doesn't take much time at all, and I basically have a mixed drum sound. I'll prove that to you right now. Let's go over here and make 1 bar, and let's add a kick drum, and put one over there. There's a snare drum, and this is painfully slow. Good. See how easy that was? And that's all automatically routing through these auxiliary tracks down here. I'll show you again. So that's effectively how I approach writing drums. I am currently working on a drum MIDI library that just has a bunch of go-to drum loops and drum beats and drum fills. A lot of different go-to stuff to just kind of quickly inspire and write out drum parts. I'm not a drummer, so that's kind of a crutch that I can lean into. When that's ready to go, I'll obviously share it on this channel and give it away. But for the most part, I'm just kind of writing stuff in manually. That's how I approach drums on my writing template. So just to sum that up, I have a MIDI virtual instrument, and I'm routing the shells out of that into these auxiliary tracks that have my go-to drum samples on them. On top of that, I have more processing below it, and what that effectively does is with a couple clicks, I can get a full drum mix done without having to think too hard. Pretty cool. All right, let's keep on moving forward. So we talked about the production effects at the top. We talked about the drums. All right, tambourine. If you've not seen my auxiliary percussion secrets video, I recommend to go check that out. There's so much value in watching that video, as well as I give away all of my go-to auxiliary percussion. So there'll be a link to that video somewhere over here. Check it out, download it. That is how I approach aux percussion here, where I just simply import it from another session and I throw it in and I don't think too hard. So in this case, we have a tambourine. So I'm actually just gonna solo everything that we've done so far. So if I press play, I get these MIDI drums going. Cool. So you can see, again, effortless. When it comes to writing, you want to eliminate as much friction as possible, because all of those little things that get in the way of you writing kind of break down that flow, and then you get distracted, and it's not good, and it makes your writing session way less effective. So we got a tambourine, we throw it in there, it's already panned, it's already got some processing on it, it's already routed correctly, and I don't have to think about it any more than just like, I want a tambourine here, boom, it's there, the end. All right, underneath that we have bass. And as I mentioned earlier, in green and blue, we have guitar here. Now, one thing I want to say really quickly is these are all routed and these have processing on them. So if I were to track into this session, there'd be some latency, and it'd be really annoying. So what I actually do is I create this tracking track at the bottom here. And on that, I just have an amp sim. I have it routed to input 2, which is where I record all of my guitar and bass. So I will record all of my guitars and bass into that tracking audio track, and I'll record it DI, and it just has an amp sim there for playback reference. And then I'll drag that to the appropriate track for it to fit in the mix properly. So if I want to record a bass, I'll record it in this tracking thing, boom, drag it to the bass track. Life is good. If I want to record a rhythm guitar, I track it in the audio track, drag it to the rhythm guitar section. If I want it to be a lead guitar, I track it in the tracking audio track, and I put it in the lead guitar section. You understand. So that's just a simple thing that I do. The tracking audio track is routed outside of my main mix, so there isn't a bunch of mix bus processing and all this stuff on it that would introduce latency, and that's just a little workflow thing that works for me within Pro Tools. I don't know what it's like in other DAWs, but it's just a simple thing that works, so that's how I do it. On bass, I keep it super simple. Usually I'm just tracking either a jazz bass or a P bass that I have over here, and I don't think too hard. I just put a bit of compression and a sand amp on it, and honestly it doesn't sound amazing, but it sounds good enough. Time to change those strings. Moving forward, we have the rhythm guitars here, and I have two Evertune guitars that, if you're a subscriber of this channel, you've heard me talk about a million times. A Telecaster and a PRS. I have the Telecaster set in standard and the PRS set in half step down. In this case, I use the PRS, and all I do is I track it DI on the tracking track and then drag it up here. At the moment, I'm using the STL Amp Hub plugin because it sounds awesome. It's just, I really love the Marshall tone that's in this plugin here. So that's already set up. I don't have to think about it. I track on the tracking track, drag it up there, and then we get these rhythm guitars. So I'll just double track them. They're automatically panned left, right. There's no thought behind it, and this is what we get. Okay, let me throw this all in here. You get the point. So it's pretty straightforward. The whole goal of this, something that I think is really important, is that I'm not moving faders, I'm not panning things. I totally can if I want, but I want this to be set up in a way where I can just drag the audio where it needs to go, and it's basically mixed. So let's keep going through the guitars here. When it comes to guitars, I like to have rhythm guitars, which is just like a main distortion. I like to have like lo-fi guitars, which is just a filtered guitar sound, clean guitars, and then a lead guitar. So I'm gonna play the entire little demo that I made here. I made this just with the goal of showing off the writing session. Turns out I actually ripped off Holiday by Green Day at the start, which you're gonna hear, which is hilarious, but oh well. But you're gonna hear some clean guitar, and then you're gonna hear some lo-fi guitar. Everything's gonna kick in. You're gonna hear the main rhythms, and then after one repetition of the main rhythm guitars, you're gonna hear the lead guitar, and this is what that all sounds like. there it is. So I really want to drive home the point that it was relatively effortless to just kind of whip this whole thing together here. You just get a drum beat, you get some rhythm guitars, lay down an easy bass part, and add, some lead guitar, and boom, this is where we're at. So it already sounds like a song, and from there we can kind of turn it into whatever we want. I mentioned at the start that all the drums are routed to this master drum aux. I should have mentioned that the bass is also routed to the master bass, and the guitars are routed to the master guitar. So I can simply adjust. If the guitars are too loud, I can, boom, turn all the guitars down 1 dB. If the bass is too loud, I can turn the bass down 1 dB, whatever. And there's go-to processing on this that I haven't touched. It's just there, it's set up, and then coming into the master bus, I have my master bus set up. So I have, all right, we got some EQ on the master bus that's already set up. This is just from some mix that I did. And then we have an SSL comp, just a main master bus compressor. Then we have tape, JST clip, which is always nice. And then just a slate limiter to get it up to loudness. So I'm gonna play it one more time, and I'm just gonna look at the meter on this track here and just see how that's feeling. So you can see that it's plenty loud. It's up there. It's competitive with any sort of commercial track. So if I were to take this demo, bounce it, and send it to someone, they don't have to be adjusting their speakers. Just another thing to keep in mind. There's kind of like a pre-master or mock master template already set up, which is great. So I can quickly plug things in and then not have to worry about anything else. Okay, there's 2 more things that I want to touch on. One of them's a bit of an organizational thing, and another one of them is a bit of a creative tool. So naturally, when I end up writing something, I don't really have the intention of writing. I'll just pick up a guitar and I'll start playing. I'm like, oh, that's a cool riff. I want to lay that riff down. So I'm here in front of my computer, I create a Pro Tools session, and sometimes I get stuck at naming the session, which sounds so silly, but there's no way I'm the only person that's experienced this. Now, I like to keep things organized. I like to keep things neat. So what I did is I just created a random writing folder. It's called Random Writing. Whenever I create a new session, I just name it the date. So then I don't have to worry about, oh, am I gonna bog up my computer with a million different writing sessions with a bunch of different names. I just name it the date, and then I move on and I can write. And effectively what this does is it just makes it easy for my brain to know that I'm putting everything in an organized place and I'm not turning my computer into an absolute disaster mess. I don't know if anybody else has run into that issue, but that's something that works for me. So just name the session, the date of the day that you're working on it. And then the second thing, and this is back into Pro Tools here, this is a creative thing. When I come up with a riff, I'll start playing it. And what I like to do is I like to hit the record button and I'll just play. I'll just riff. No click track, no nothing. Just riff, okay? So just feel it out, and then I'll come back and listen to it. And oftentimes there'll be a little bit of gold in there. There'll be some cool things where I'm like, oh, okay, I should keep that idea. I give myself the time to kind of play, and then from there, then I'll start mapping out the tempo. I'll be like, okay, at the start I started playing at this tempo, towards the end I started feeling this. Okay, let's find something, boom. I put the tempo in, and then I will start actually recording the riffs to the tempo. Oftentimes, when I listen back to it, I'm like, it should be a little faster, it should be a little slower. So one thing I like to do, and this is a Pro Tools thing, I'm sure you can do it in every other DAW, I keep all of my tracks in an elastic audio mode, generally polyphonic, and I leave it in ticks. And what that allows me to do is I can go ahead and I can go, okay, this is cool. But I think the song should be, I don't know, faster. Let's go at 130. So this allows me to change the tempo after the fact, which is great, but I think the real benefit of this is it allows me not to freak out at the start and overthink on, is this the right tempo? Should I be tracking it at this tempo? Should I speed it up 1 BPM? Should I slow it down? And then I start bogging down my brain worrying about things that I shouldn't be worrying about, and it allows me to just create. So I guess to sum this whole thing up, this entire session is meant to make your life easier. It's meant to make it so you can create and just focus on the creative side and less on the technical side. I hope me sharing this gave you some insight on how you can start writing and being more creative going forward. I have been using this for a couple months now, and I find that I'm using it more and more and more, and the more that I write, the better that I write. This is not a good example of that, but the more that I write, the better that I write, and it kind of compounds and you can build off of it. It's a good thing. So that is basically it for the video. I hope you learned a lot about writing templates and you can apply this. If you have any ideas on how I can improve mine, feel free to leave them down below in the comment. I'm always learning and tweaking and trying to get this thing to evolve, and it's yeah, it's been awesome. So Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. There will be links for that down below. If you're releasing music, consider using my DistroKid link if you sign up for DistroKid. If you want to talk about audio production or anything related to my band Locket, you can join my Discord server. There's a link for that down below. And I think that is basically it. So thank you very much for watching. My name's Corey Bergeron. Create more, create more, create more.